Welcome to a video from thedigitalifestyle.com. In this video I'm going to explore some of the secrets to great sounds on the Korg Modwave. The Korg Modwave is wavetable synthesis, but it's a lot more than that. It's got modulation routines, it's got motion sequencing. There's so much you can do with it. You can get some really rich and evolving sounds, and that's what we're looking at this video. I'm going to be focusing on the motion sequencer. So imagine envelopes on a traditional synth like the Modwave, and analog synths have ADSR envelopes: attack, decay, release, sustain. Well, imagine if you wanted a 16-step envelope, or maybe you want a 32-step envelope. Well, you can do that with the Modwave, and that's because of the motion sequencing. So that's the kind of things we're going to look at in this video. So what you heard there was a sound that was created, just a single layer of sounds using the motion sequencer. But what we're going to do is start from scratch. So here's an Init performance. Now I'm using the Modwave native to do this. It's actually a good tool because you can see a lot of the values being outputted by the motion sequencer and the mod processor. So it's a good way of me explaining it. So that's why I'm using that. So what we're going to do, we're going to create one of those evolving sounds with steps in that you can hear earlier on. But we'll start off, we've got a basic sawtooth wave, and I'm going to just go down to one oscillator for now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that wavetable, and I'm going to use one of the DW8000 wave tables that's in the Modwave. The reason I'm doing that is because you can hear it's a good evolving one. So you can hear that evolve. So what we're going to do is use the motion sequencer to evolve this patch. Now, there's a couple of different techniques I'm going to use in this video. I'm going to show you that multi-stage envelope one. We're going to create something almost like you could do on a wave state, where it sounds like there's separate sounds being sequenced when there isn't. But the first step, we'll just look at do some basic sort of evolving with that sound. So here's our motion sequencer. So it's made up of a timing lane that controls the timing, pitch, so you can control pitch, shape, which I'll show you shortly, but it's about how we use those values from A, B, C and D. So you've got 4 lanes, and you don't have to have them all the same length, or they can run out of phase with each other. And you can do things like probability, which I'll show you shortly, and smoothing and things like that. But let's just create something basic evolving one. So this sequence lane here, it goes 1, I'm going to go 8, let's go 12, and I'm just going to step up the scale, and then going up, and then I'll probably come back down again. If you've got the hardware one, you can just record these with the step motion. So there we go. So I've got a sequence there. So I go to the modulation, and I make lane A, or step A, full modulation of that wave. So it's predictable because you can see this sequence on there. This is why I like the native one. You can see that value in there. So I could change it. So that has then given us that evolving sound. Now if you went for a subtler waveform, you could go for, let's say, a pulse width. So you can hear it's more subtle. But I'm going to go back to using the DW because I want to create a less subtle effect. So what I want it to be now, I want it to be a harsher transition. So I'm going to turn the crossfade down first of all. So you can hear that coming through now. Now what I want to do is make it more rhythmic based. So while this is going up and down there, that sounds great, but I want it to get that pulse effect I was demonstrating earlier on. You can do this with envelopes. We've got 2 layers, and I want to give something different on the 2 layers. So what I'm going to do is abandon the sort of the main ADSR envelope that we've got in here, and I'm going to use Now, there's a couple of different ways we can do this, but I'm going to use a trick of using an oscillator being triggered by the motion sequencer. So I'll show you what I mean. So first of all, let's just say I wanted to have layer B controlling that volume, so it's nothing at the moment. I go to the sequencer, I can have layer B full. So there you can hear that I'm triggering the, increasing the volume, but it's not like an envelope being triggered, like you're pressing a key, it's just turning the volume up on it. So instead of doing that, I'm going to go back to my envelope, or go back to the level here. I'm going to change this to use envelope 2. I'm on oscillator 2, that's why I'm choosing envelope 2. So it's currently just being triggered the once. But instead of this being triggered by the key on action, I'm going to get it triggered by the step pulse, and the step pulse is a constant pulse that's being generated when the step sequence is or the motion sequence is in play. Now it all sounds a bit jumbled at the moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the timing of that. I'm going to have it in 8s. There's two things I could do now. I could just go like that. That's more like it now. So it's just using that 8th note. Or I could let it cycle through these and have different timings. So I can have a couple of slow notes, a couple of fast notes, which is what I'm going to do, but not yet. So for now, I'll just put all these as the same. It makes things a bit easier to sing. So now you can hear that effect I was after. I'm going to sync the notes as well, so when I play a chord, they all play together. And if I go back to the envelope, oscillator 2 envelopes, I'm going to get triggered by generator step B. I'm going to set this to linear as well, so it just triggers on these pulses. And just so we can hear what I'm talking about, I'm going to give it a nice pulse width. I'm going to raise it up an octave so we can hear it a bit better as well. There you go. So that's got the exact effect that I want. Just one final thing to do with that as well is I can set the main envelope release so that we can get, so we take it off, we can hear it fade out like that. So that's exactly what I wanted to do. So now let's just put a bit of effects on it to get a bit of life. Sounded good, and we've still got 2 lanes spare, so that we could do something else with. So maybe I could do some pulse width modulation or something else like that. So let's just put some values in here. I'm going to keep it fairly subtle. Go to the position on there and set that to B. Late C, doesn't it? So I've saved that, and I'll make these available as a free download. Okay, so that's one use of the motion sequencer there, and we've not looked at probability and some other things, so I want to quickly show you those. But I did mention about the envelope trick, didn't I? So we'll have a look at that. So now we're going to have a look at using the motion sequence as an envelope. So on this one, what I'm going to do now is, instead of repeating infinitely, I'm going to have no repeats. So this is just going to do it once as an envelope. So the first time you hit a key is the first note that will be played. So we want the volume, and I'm going to do this with a filter sweep. So I'm going to start off with it low, and then we're going to go up to a almost open value, so up a bit. Then we're going to stay open for a bit, but moving it to give some movement in the sound. Then it's going to come down to almost nothing, and then the tail is going to just go back up again and then down to nothing. We've got the envelope, but we don't want it to keep repeating like that. So this is the number of steps. So we've got, I don't think we need all these extra ones, but we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 steps. So we're ending on that one. So I do want to take that down, and I'm going to give myself a little bump there and there, and take it down to 0. And maybe we'll make that a bit slower attack. So this end one I've just set there, so it ends on the lowest with it closed basically. So there is an envelope that we've created, a multi-step envelope that you couldn't do with the normal ADSR envelope. So there is a multi-step envelope, something that would be quite hard to do with a traditional ADSR envelope. We could change the timing lane again just to drag that longer. And then if I was just to give it a bit of vintage feel, let's give it a bit of vintage chorus and some tape delay, and maybe a little bit of reverb on there. So that's the kind of thing you do with them. And of course the other thing, we could just include a little bit of pitch modulation in there, just to give it a little bit of life. So if I go to the tuning and set that as layer B, so that's the idea that you can do with that. Now there's another use we've got for the motion synchronizers around envelopes, is there's actually envelopes built in, because we've got this shape lane and we can do different things with this shape line. So let me go back to an init patch for that one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger the filter, but use like an envelope for it using this shape lane. So let's put, I'm going to put every other one up, just show you how we can do it. Then go to the cutoff, turn that down and make that lane step A. So there you can hear it kicking in. I'm going to again slow it down to a quarter note so you can hear that smooth transition between them. It's like a triangle wave. And let's just put that to there. That's it. Right, so now we've got that. It's almost like a triangle wave because it's doing it linear transition. If we change it to off, you would hear it. But with these shapes now, we can choose all these different shapes. So let me choose the saw down, and what we should hear then is the filter go down, and this one it should go up. Use shape. So you can hear we've sort of got that envelope and a backwards envelope on that one. On this one we could use a single one like that, but we can also, there's a double one as well. So you can see now I can then start to get some different. So now we're using those different shapes. So it sounds a bit weird, but I quite like it. So we can combine that with some pitch. And I think what I might do is go back to increase that timing again. Let's have a listen. There we go. And then, so I'm going to put some pitch steps in here as well to give me a kind of nice little sequence. So there we're combining the pitch. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change that. So instead of being control and filter, I'm going to use envelope 1, and then we can use envelope 2 to offset and have an interesting effect as well. So if I'm going to leave that remove that filter, just leave it open for now. Go to envelope 1, make it nice and short, get it triggered by sequence lane A. Oscillator 1, I'm going to make it be triggered. Oscillator 1 is controlled by envelope 1. And oscillator 2 is going to be controlled by envelope 2. There's the alternate idea that I was having before. And to make it interesting more on the filter side, we use the filter envelope. And I'm going to trigger that by the pulse. So there. So now I've got the idea of those two offset ones. Some alternate octaves on that level as well. And for that I'm actually going to change that back to be step A's value. So we've got the idea of those two sequence lanes controlling the oscillators. One is being triggered by an envelope and one is using the shape, and the shape could affect anything. Right, so the other thing you've got is you've got this shape lane, so you can choose the shape that each step does, and you can actually use to control filter, oscillators, all sorts of things. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to turn the filter down, and I'm going to make it controlled by sequence layer lane A. All currently at 0. So let's put some values in there. I'm going to use just 4 for now, just to try and keep these nice and simple. So if I shake it like that, you'll see. diagram, the image there, you can see that it's smoothly going between 100 and minus 100, so you get like a triangle wave effect. If I went on here and made it linear, you're going to get a square type effect. If I use the shape, you can then choose all these different shapes. So if I do saw down, you'll get like an envelope, a R envelope. On this one, I could go saw up. Let's just use those 4 as well. But there's loads of different ones you could use. And you've got some double ones. Like this one. So you can actually have a step that's almost broken into 2 steps. Or even 3. So it might be controlling pitch. It could be controlling the filter like we're doing now. But it means that each step you can then see what it's doing there. So it's like having, you could have all the step. So it gives you full control over the step, and you can then control what shape that step's in. If I try and increase the time on that, perhaps you'll get a better idea of this. There we go, you can hear it there better. And especially if I combine that with a bit of pitch as well. So you can see there that I'm sort of almost created three notes in one step. So you can imagine with all these steps that you've got, you can make something really complex. And I've used that on a couple of Tangerine Dream type tracks as well. Now, another thing we've not looked at is the timing lanes. We can adjust the timing lanes on you've got full control over those timing lanes. So this one is maybe a quarter, but so we could have 2 quarters, and then we could have some 16s, and then you could have 2 8s, and you can really play about with it like that. And then especially if we get some pitch on here, so let's just shorten that just to sure I can use it as a quick example. And now I've set a few different values on here. I can start playing with the resonance. It was C, wasn't it? Put some cross delay on there and some chorus. So to give you a better idea of what you can do with that, I'm going to go to one of the Tangerine Dream ones that I did. So here you can see one that I've used the different timings to get that sort of effect. one other thing you can do with this kind of thing as well is you've got some probability. So on these, all the probability is high, but probability means whether it's going to play the note. The lower the probability, the less likely it is to play it, but there's still a chance. At, say 50% it's 50-50, at 0% it won't play it. So we could get some really interesting non-repeating almost sequences if I start to play around with these probabilities on these pitch lengths. So I've got that low note there. I'm going to make its probability quite low. So I'm going to get a low note instead. That's a low probability. So it doesn't do it very often, but it will do it at some point. Right, so now the probability is 46, so it doesn't do it all the time, but you can hear it doing it. So you can really go crazy with that. And then of course you can control the filter, you can control other things for it, and you can also do the probability of these notes. So I could throw in a longer note in there. And reduce that down as well. So there's loads you can do. Incidentally, earlier on when we were looking at the envelopes, what I didn't mention is where I create the envelope and just add on the repeat ones. You can have the different timing lanes, so you can actually make them move again, so you can make them stop. So that's another way of doing it. So those are some of the interesting techniques with the motion sequence you can use. You start to combine some of these and you can produce some sequences that almost never repeat. And you combine that with wave sequencing, the wave tables changing, and then you can create some really interesting effects. So here is an example of using some FM. The motion sequences control the FM there, so you really can create some interesting patterns with that. So that was using the motion sequencer. There's a lot more secrets for the Modwave still to come, but I decided to split them into separate videos, not rather make this one humongous video. So in future videos, I'm going to be looking at how you can use the arpeggiator combined with the motion sequencer to produce drum patterns, so you can actually change or create rhythmic drum patterns using samples, which is tricky to do without using those combinations. We'll also be looking at the MUD processor and some other interesting secrets. So thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.